Quad has now come of age. It will remain an important pillar of stability in the Indo-Pacific region. These were the words of Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the first virtual Quad Alliance meeting. The Quad Alliance witnessed leaders of the United States, Japan and Australia emphasizing on greater cooperation to tackle multiple challenges in the post-pandemic world, including an increasingly belligerent China. Of course, they didn't name China, but it's very clear that this is a grouping that's out to checkmate an expansionist force in the region.
Quad has come of age. It will now remain an important pillar of stability in the region.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's big United Quad Alliance pitch, a call for secure, stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific.
Our agenda today, covering areas like vaccines, climate change and emerging technologies, make the Quad a force for global good.
In the first virtual summit of Quad heads of the state, US President Joe Biden too urged for greater Quad unity in the post-pandemic world, announcing joint vaccine partnership.
Coming years. Free and open Indo-Pacific is essential. The United States is committed to working with you, our partners, and all our allies in the region to achieve stability. We're launching an ambitious new joint partnership that is going to boost vaccine manufacturing and for the global benefit.
In a partnership,
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Japanese Premier Yoshihide Suga pledged to work towards a secure and stable Indo-Pacific.
History teaches us that when nations engage together in a partnership of strategic trust, of common hope and shared values, much can be achieved.
With the four countries working together, I wish to firmly advance our cooperation to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific.
The mega Quad unity has left China jittery. Long before the meeting even took place, Chinese mouthpiece Global Times threatened India, accusing it of carrying out a strategic blackmail. Continuing its slander campaign, Global Times alleged that India had failed to understand China's goodwill. With Chinese expansionism emerging as a threat to world peace, four democracies have come together to tame the dragon. In 2020, the world witnessed the biggest ever military exercise by Quad members.
In the near future, we'll see more cooperation in the field of technology, climate change, security, maritime security, as also vaccine diplomacy. India is going to push for not just counter-terrorism and vaccine maitri, but also resilient supply chains. In New Delhi, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
And India's Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla gave details. There are 3 working groups that are being put together. Of course, the heads of state, they will meet. They've met virtually now. Later this year, they will meet in person. Does that indicate the importance that's being attached to this group? And these working groups will be on vaccine implementation, critical technology and climate change. Let's listen in to the Foreign Secretary.
At the meeting, the 4 countries emphasized their commitment to the principles that unite us and underpin all our national experiences, our shared belief in democracy, pluralism and market-based economic principles. We are all committed to a free and open, inclusive and rules-based, secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. The 4 countries have agreed to a plan to pool their financial resources, manufacturing capabilities and capacities, and logistical strengths so as to ramp up the manufacture and distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines in the Indo-Pacific region. We believe this will speed up the process of post-pandemic recovery and enable families and businesses to put the COVID-19 crisis behind them and move towards normalization.
How does this translate into nuts and bolts action on ground? And is this, as China puts it, and Asian NATO to checkmate China. Joining me on India First is Anant Krishnan, senior journalist. He's been reporting extensively from Beijing. Inar Tenjin is a political commentator. Once again, he joins us from China. Lieutenant General Gurmeet Singh is former Deputy Chief of the Army Staff. And General Gurmeet Singh, if I may begin with you, it's a pillar of stability in the region, says the Prime Minister, signal to smaller countries that 4 big democracies and 4 big economies are coming together. But once they come together, what do they do that will send out a message to China that its expansionism is on notice?
Absolutely, Gaurav. One thing is definite that this is a historic step. It has evolved the Quad to this level, and it is here to stay. And I think more than what has been spoken, it is what has been signaled. I think that is what is important. And although the communication was wrapped in the vaccine, COVID, post-pandemic, economy, those aspects, but the message has gone absolutely that it is a coming together of maritime security, of the security and strategic partnership. It is, I would say, a check on the Chinese expansionism and belligerence which was seen in 2020. I think that
Anant
message has gone straight.
what is, in your appreciation, the biggest takeaway from the first summit, a virtual summit? Scott Morrison said Quad will power the region in times to come. Do you see this as an emerging economic alliance and not a military alliance as Beijing has been calling it?
Gaurav, I'd say it's both. And I think that if not an alliance, a close partnership. But I'd say what's really the biggest takeaway for me, Gaurav, is that there's been so much criticism of the Quad for it being a talk shop. But I think there are clear deliverables this time around. If you look at the vaccines, and if you look at, I think even more important, Gaurav, something that you've been reporting on, the technology working group, because that could pave the way for the 4 countries to come together when it comes to something like 5G, where they have shared concerns about China in the rollout of 5G networks. So I think the fact that there always has been a security binding glue to the Quad, no question about that. But what's new this time around is there are concrete economic factors that the 4 countries are working together on, if you put vaccines as part of that as well. And I think that's a huge positive going forward. And I think that when the 4 leaders meet in person in June on the sidelines of the G7 summit, when they meet again, which is expected, I think you're going to see more push when it comes to economic alignment of the 4 countries. And I think for the region, Gaurav, which is in China's economic embrace, that's perhaps just as important, if not more important, than the security dimensions of the Quad.
Oh, absolutely. So it's a signal that's also going out to ASEAN countries. You do not need to fear China. Is that one of the major signals? And this is just a first step, a basic first step. Mr. Tengen, China has been seeing this as an Asian NATO. But nothing, at least in the conversation today, seemed to indicate that it's a military alliance that's in the works. There's talk about, as Anant was putting it, vaccines, technology sharing, perhaps maybe 5G, where democracies want to keep China out for the fear of snooping, especially Huawei and ZTE. How would Beijing be viewing this, sir?
Well, I think Beijing would be reacting very positively to anything that is helping in the pandemic. Remember, they were the ones who first put in a large sum of money into COVAX, the United Nations program. In terms of any country forming a military alliance, or whether it's spoken or unspoken, as you in the beginning of your show always put it, it's always about checking China, about the fire-breathing dragon, people coming together against it. I think that kind of talk leads to China being uneasy about what the actual intentions are. But as long as it's peaceful, it's about trade, it's about development, I think that's wonderful. In terms of 5G, it's not a question of countries coming together on it. It's really about the cost effectiveness of the solution itself. If India comes up with a better 5G solution, the marketplace will respond to it. Right now, China has a good one. Everyone says that it's a security threat, but there's actually been no concrete evidence to that, despite the fact that it's been investigated by many countries, both Britain and Germany. said
And
that it was not a threat.
There is also an
before they
apprehension.
bowed to political
There is an
pressure.
apprehension. So, you're not just looking at the money aspect. Security
Apprehension is
aspect
not
would
fact.
far outweigh
If I'm
the
afraid of
economy,
you, it's
perhaps.
different
But
than if
Anant,
you've attacked me.
what's the buzz in Beijing? Because some of the stuff that we're hearing from the Chinese mouthpiece seems to indicate that warning India, you're taking our goodwill for granted, you don't understand us, don't play with fire. What's this kind of signaling, Anant?
Well, I think the message from the Chinese Foreign Ministry today was something that has been quite consistent all along, saying that China didn't like the kind of multilateralism that lended itself to quote-unquote exclusive cliques or exclusive blocs among countries. That's something that they've been saying. But looking at the opinions in the Chinese media among Chinese strategic experts, they do frame the Quad as something that's aimed at containing China, and it's widely framed as US-led, even though, in effect, I think I wouldn't really call it US-led. In fact, the origins of the Quad owe probably more to Japan in getting this together. And I think all four countries have equal stakes in the Quad. And I don't think it's a US-led as I think China's media wants to frame it. But on the other hand, even as they frame this as somewhat as a containment initiative aimed at China, they also do play it down, saying that the four countries really weren't entirely on the same page when it came to their respective challenges with China. I think one common argument that the Chinese press has been making is that when it comes to economic interests, all four of them have different economic interests vis-a-vis China. And that's something that's going to be difficult for them to be completely on the same page. But at the same time, Gaurav, I don't think that's an entirely a fair expectation. I don't think any of the four Quad countries want to be 100% on the same page, and they're aware of the fact that it's all about finding shared interests, even of course as they have their own specific agenda. Same with India, Gaurav. This isn't to say that India is going to completely jettison every other relationship just for the Quad. That's nobody's argument is that that's going to be the case.
Absolutely.
Every country has its own interest, but if there is a huge space for these four countries to work together, then why not? China itself does have its own quadrilateral groupings. For instance, even amid the pandemic, there was one four-country grouping that China convened with Pakistan, Nepal, and Afghanistan. So every country does have a right to work together with small groups as it sees fit. So I think that if China is doing that as well, it should be fairly comfortable with other countries doing that.
When we see some of the headlines that emerge from China, General Gurmeet Singh, in your appreciation, will Quad lead to more hostilities between India and China, whether it's in Ladakh or in the Indian Ocean? How will such an alliance, if it were to take shape, a more concrete shape, how would it help India in a situation like Ladakh, where it's clear as day that China violated decades of agreements between the two countries and tried to take away Indian territory?
Gaurav, I would say that in the overall perspective, this will be useful to India, because the way China was going on expansionism, belligerence, and opening all the fronts, I think there was a requirement of a global front to control China in these aspects of it. And that's the area where I think it will put the required pressure and the required grouping together and interoperability to ensure that China doesn't set out in its path of expansionism and belligerence. I think what is India going to gain out of it is the interoperability, intelligence sharing, technology, and coming of the four like-minded countries who have a similar security perspective. That is what is important. In fact, in today's warfare, it is not only military or security alone. It is all elements of power, all elements of war act in consonance. It is a convergence of all the leverages, which is important. From that point of view, I think it will have a significant bearing on making India, I would say, strong in its stand against those things which are not acceptable to us.
Okay, because what we see here are powerful democracies uniting against what many openly call an expansionist China. It's also powerful economies that seem to be uniting. And perhaps if the effort is to have alternate supply chains, resilient supply chains, not so dependent on China, would that be a signal to China that its expansionism is uncalled for and unacceptable? Mr. Tengen, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can. In terms of your question, I think you're phrasing it in a way that somehow China has been forcing its goods on other countries. That's not the case. China has been very adept at growing. Remember, it was way behind India in the 1960s. Without financial reserves, without exportable resources, it has been able to pull itself up using its own system. Because China uses a different system doesn't mean that it's evil. China is not saying that India should change its system, but there seems to be this insistence, this kind of axiomatic idea that because China's system is different, it is therefore bad. I would like, to phrase it this way. Let's say the situation was reversed and it was India that was leading the pack, that India was ahead, and that the U.S. was trying to maintain its worldwide hegemony, economically, politically, and military. And it was drawing a circle around India because it was a threat. You have to consider that this is how China sees this.
But at the same time, then China is closing its eyes to ground realities. When you look at Chinese expansionism in Ladakh, or its attempt in Doklam, or its actions in South and East China Sea, or even in the Indian Ocean region, sir. So we can't close our eyes to ground realities as we see them on ground. But Anant, is there an attempt? Would that be an attempt when four powerful
democracies... Do you want me to answer that, or are you just making a statement? Are you just making a statement, or do you want me to answer that?
I want Anant to answer that, sir, because I want to keep the the conversation going. Anant, is the effort for four powerful economies to come together and perhaps shift supply chains out of China? Is that also an effort?
Gaurav, I think even if that's a long-term consideration of India's, and we've heard the Indian government talk about it, especially since we're hugely reliant on China still for a number of key imports, I think that we should have realistic expectations. I don't think any country is going to be able to end overnight its dependence on China as the world's second largest economy. I think even if you look at Japan, one of the four Quad countries, it's been talking of a China plus one strategy, which is not really ending its reliance on China, but finding additional supply chains to diversify away from China. So I think that's going to be the trend, where it's not that countries or companies from India or the US are going to overnight pull out their investments from China. I think that's the supply chains in China have been constructed over decades and are really well integrated and very hard to replace overnight. I think it's more a long-term effort. When they use the word resilience, is to find alternatives. And I think it's going to take years and years of investment to do that. I think it's a step in the right direction. But I think that we should be realistic that this is a start, this is the beginning, and there's a long way to go in that endeavor.
Okay, but it's not just about four democracies or four powerful economies, General Gurmeet Singh. It's also about other democracies and economies coming to ensure that sea lanes of communication are kept open, free, and fair. Apart from the US, Japan, Australia, and India, you also have British warships or French warships or German warships that will be sailing into the Indo-Pacific, General Gurmeet Singh. That too is a signal that puts expansionist forces on notice, or will it not have any impact at all, sir?
Absolutely. Gaurav, one thing is definite, that this is going to make a major difference on the maritime security. If I call it collective maritime security, it will be a major area. And since we have seen, like we had this Malabar exercise, all the four nations of this Quad had participated, and the understanding, interoperability, and I think that makes a difference. With the challenges in East China Sea, South China Sea, Taiwan, and also the challenges in the Indian Ocean, I think all combined, this will make a major difference. And I would say that apart from this, it is not only maritime security, it is the four nations pooling together or coming together on the cooperation platform as far as technology, weapons, intelligence, surveillance, monitoring. I think those are the things which actually get into a form of leverages and the deterrence, which makes a potent package. And that is what makes a change. And like what Prime Minister said, this has come of the age. That means what was formed in 2004 for the AIM tsunami. In 2007, it was formalized. and 2017 it was revised, and today it has reached a level where it is going to give dividends on the aspects of security.
We'll be watching that. We'll be watching that very closely. General Gurmeet Singh, Anand Krishnan and Mr. Narthengan in Beijing, many thanks for joining me here on India First.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.